Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Kamala Avila-Salmon, who is the head of inclusive content at Lionsgate. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, pleasure's all ours, and it's an honor to have you on your accolades and the I saw your bio, the people that you have worked with, the places you have been. Definitely got a little long line of things right there, a little history. But before we
Thank
actually
you.
dive in and hear all about that, because the listeners need to know about that, could you just give us a little bit more of a background? Start it off for us. Like, where did you grow up, your cultural background?
Yeah, sure. So I am originally from Jamaica. I was born there, but I grew up in New York. So I consider myself a New Yorker and a Jamaican in equal sort of measure. I grew up in the Bronx and then in Queens. And I moved out to Los Angeles about 12 years ago, but still proudly claim I'm a New Yorker.
Okay. Well, shout out to being I'm Jamaican descent as well too. So it's always
Nice.
good to know there's another Yachty upon the other
All
side of the
right, here we go.
trade.
We're everywhere.
You don't know. And also you said the Bronx, New York, that's where I'm from as well. So shout out to that.
Listen,
I see the connections
Jamaicans
already.
always have family in New York, Miami,
Oh,
Toronto, London. That's where we're at.
oh, you hear all the
I know
key
you have
spots.
family in all those places.
If you ain't Jamaican if you ain't got that.
Listen, that's what we got.
Now, what does a Jamaican culture mean to you?
Yeah, so to me, it is definitely a huge point of pride. So I didn't grow up there. I grew up here in the US in New York, but my parents, both my parents are from there. Both of them grew up here, grew up in Jamaica, and we
Mm,
have a big extended family in Jamaica. So, like, I remember growing up when I was, making friends in school, and I would meet a lot of African Americans. Like, I definitely had a very strong feeling of like, I'm Black, obviously, but my culture is a little bit different. Right? Like
true.
we eat different things, we listen to different music, and like I feel so proud of the way that Jamaicans have really globalized our culture. You can't go to any part of the world where people don't know some of the things that are natively Jamaican, right? With
That
of
is correct.
course Bob Marley to start. So
Mm,
to me, it's a huge point of pride to have parents who came from such a small country, but a country that has made such a big impact. And I really do believe that, one of the things that is a benefit of living in the US is getting a chance to be exposed to
mm,
such a broad array of cultures that really create like what is special about the US, which is like I will not get political unless someone wants me to, but diversity is a strength, not a weakness. And I
yes.
think that like all of us bringing those identities together, me as a Black woman, also of Jamaican heritage, and bringing in Caribbean elements, whether that is in how I raise my kid, how I show up in the world, how I, cook, how I sort of think about what representation means to me from a,
Mm,
dual lens. It's a really important part of my identity.
Well, the Jamaican culture, like you said, is worldwide. I mean, anywhere from the music to the food, it
Yeah,
is a blessing to know that our culture is in all parts of the world.
that's right. What's
Sometimes
the saying? It's like I'll say it wrong, and all the Jamaicans will be like, "That's not how you say it." But I had an aunt who always said, "We're little, but we're talawa."
you better bust out the patois.
Listen, we out here.
That's right. That's right. It is good. I mean, and I feel like like you have talked about, that Jamaican culture, it definitely, has its legacy and still has many more years to come, right?
Yeah.
And we're adding to it, right?
Yes.
We're
No,
adding.
it's not lost on us that we have a Black woman running for president right now who is also of Jamaican parentage.
That is
We
correct.
out here.
We
We
come
out
on. The flags is going out. The flags is coming out. Now, what were some of the life lessons you learned in your childhood that you still like implement in your career today?
Yeah, so I think I was definitely raised to speak up and feel like I had a voice. My parents, as I said, being immigrants, talked a lot at the dinner table and the car ride to school about their experiences in Jamaica and how the contrast of what their experiences were like in the US.
Mhm.
And being, moving from a predominantly Black country to a country that has such a steep history of racism and exclusion and discrimination against Black
Yeah.
people and being sort of treated as Black for the first time. They talked very openly about what that was like and really encouraged me to have an opinion, share my voice, to not be like scared of talking about race and or other like taboo issues. I was the person in the classroom that always would like raise their hand when the teacher asked a question. I think I was just always trained to like assume that my voice did matter, and I've always used it in that way. I think that, having a lot of different friends from a lot of different backgrounds, like I count myself very lucky to have been raised in a household where I was taught to use my voice and to believe that it was okay to speak up because not everyone has that. And you
Mhm.
see that manifesting in the workplace where people don't really offer their opinion. People really
True.
sort of try to hew close to whatever leadership says it is, or like try to blend in, keep your head down. And I really wasn't raised with that. I think another early lesson that I got from a friend of mine, her dad actually said something that really resonated with me, which is just like, no is just the beginning of negotiations. Like sometimes, especially as people from marginalized communities, some of us are so afraid to even ask the question. But then if we ask it and we get a no, we're like, never mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Turn
And
around.
right, having that lesson, it was from a white friend and her white wealthy dad who was like, the way he walked through the world was like, no is just the start of negotiations, right? And that
Mm.
really resonated with me because I think sometimes we are too quick to take a no. I'm a big believer that like no is just another word. No is just a
Yeah.
stop on the pathway to yes. It doesn't have that much power unless you give it. And I heard someone also say like never take a no from someone that can't tell you yes. There's a lot of people that will try to dissuade you from the dreams that you have, the things that you want to pursue, the things you believe are possible, but most of them can't grant you that thing anyway. So why
Yeah.
are we taking their no that seriously?
Mm,
So I
mm,
think that's been a big one that's really stayed with me.
mm. That's well said. I think that's a big gem for any of the listeners that are listening, right? No is just a start of that, right?
Yes.
Of negotiating. So when it comes down to this career of yours, right?
Mhm.
I want to kind of dive into that. I know that you have a long history, but like when did you realize that this was the career you wanted to join, right? In a way, what was the breakthrough?
Yeah, so I definitely always loved entertainment. I grew up watching a lot of television. And, if you know, having Jamaican parents, like the only way I was able to watch that much television was that I was doing what I needed to do in my schoolwork. Because, they're the first ones to say, if you don't know your spelling test, like, that song on the radio, like, we're going to have a
Uh,
problem, right?
oh,
But,
you taking it back. You taking it
but
and the chores. You got to make sure you do your chores.
exact Saturday
Woo!
morning, clean
Saturday
the
morning,
house. Come
Mr.
on.
Clean.
Oh my gosh, it's reminding me. I've been thinking a lot about. So we have my husband and I. We have a kid. My husband's Belizean. I'm Jamaican, and we both grew up in those homes where Saturday morning was cleaning morning. And
Mm,
we have a son that's 6, almost 7. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's probably time to start the cleaning because I don't want to drop the ball and break the cycle. I actually
oh no, no, no.
got to
Well,
bust out the like, throwback music. So, for us, it'll be now we're going to play him a little Usher and
okay.
Brandy and like
Oh,
our old school music, like the way our
okay.
parents play the Temptations. And like when you hear that music on Saturday mornings, like
Time to
get up,
wake up.
time
Time
to
to
wake
wake
up,
up.
time to clean the bathroom. Um, so yeah, so it was just kind of like I loved entertainment. I really fell in love with things like the Cosby Show. I fell in love with music. I was a singer, and I immediately recognized what an impact entertainment had in our culture. The way
Yeah,
that like, when my family and I watched the Cosby Show, like everyone just felt better. Right, because we felt like represented in a way that felt affirming and aspirational and positive as opposed to what you would see if you would watch local news where like everyone that looks like us is like someone that they're trying to catch, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so like
yeah.
I think that like I
Excellent point.
without knowing exactly what all the jobs were in entertainment. Besides, like, I liked singing. I was like, maybe I want to be a singer. But also, like, when I was younger, I also like got in my head very early, like, I want to go to Harvard and I want to be a lawyer, right? So that was also an ambition that I had. But I knew I wanted to do something that would be close to this industry that really shapes culture and perception and identity. And so over time, that, sharpened and focused a little bit more into, first I worked in the music business, working at a couple different record labels, learning marketing, learning how things are kind of brought to the public. And then after business school, I moved out to LA to start working more in content and television and film,
Okay.
streaming and tech. Really, again, always wanting to get as close as I could to how can I use representation as a means of transforming culture through the power of storytelling.
And I know you're very big on that storytelling.
Yes.
And you hit on a little bit of education. You talked about that
Yeah.
just briefly. Like you like speaking on education, like you earned your bachelor's and MBA at a very, very prestigious university. Like, how did that shape your approach to like leadership and like the work you did within the entertainment industry?
Yeah, so as I said, my parents will say that they are not sure how and when I decided I wanted to go to Harvard, but it was very, very early. Like in elementary school, I would say like that's my
Oh,
ambition, right? I want to
okay,
go.
let's go.
And I remember, of course, like as a young Black girl growing up first in the Bronx and in Queens, we're not surrounded in our neighborhood by people who went to Harvard. Like, but I was lucky, like my dad was a professor. He worked at NYU and at Marymount. And, my mom was an accountant before she went on to become a partner at a big accounting firm. And so the idea of setting small goals just never occurred to me. Like that was not the ethos of our family. The
Mhm.
expectation was like, whatever you do, you're going to do it big. And
Yeah,
like I internalized this message of like, I want to be at the top of whatever it is I choose to pursue. And for me, like Harvard represented that. And then I will say, like, when I, having gone there twice in different sort of environments, both undergrad and grad school, I am super grateful for what I got from my time there.
hmm,
I think that, like, it really solidified in me the need and the hunger that I have to be a change maker and to just so much of being a change maker is, I think, having the audacity to believe that you can actually make a difference. Right. And I think that there's people obviously who take it to a point of hubris, and that's not what I mean, right? I am not the most important or the most impactful person in the world, but I am an impactful and important person in the world, right? And
come
other
on.
people can be as well, right? And so being surrounded by people who just believed that like they could do something that would resonate on a big scale and would matter to people, that they could do something that would make people's lives better, that they would do something that could make people's lives more efficient. They could create a product that would be
Yeah.
revolutionary. Just the idea of believing that like you can be the one. I will say that's probably the biggest thing I got from Harvard both times. And, looking back, like I definitely have tons of classmates that have gone on to do that. They have been the ones to create, big things that have shaped our culture.
Mhm.
But, it's not even really about like, did you start $1 billion company? It's more about like, are you doing something in your realm of influence, whatever that is, and in your area of passion that really um, indicates that you believe that you want to have some impact in the world, that when you're
Mhm.
gone, something is left behind, something has changed, something is different.
That's
And I think
clutch.
that
That
is
is
just
clutch.
right, that was just sort of like the basic starting point for everyone at Harvard, which I think was really great. And then also it's a place where I met like, friends who became like family. I sang in a gospel choir in undergrad named Kumba that has continued to become like to be like a support system. But
Okay.
also I just have met people who have been such great resources. A lot of times when you come from, you're not coming from a wealthy legacy Ivy League family, which I did not. Right. I came from, a family of Jamaican immigrants that had big dreams, but like we didn't have all the things that maybe money and privilege will afford you. You
Mhm.
think sometimes that like going to these fancy schools is just about getting a degree and like you can get a degree anywhere. So like why spend the money or why take out the loans? Like it is so not about the degree solely. Like you'll get that and you'll get
Yeah.
an incredible education, but it really is the network, right? I
Yeah.
use a version of that network very regularly to connect with all different types of people, whether it's like now I'm like, I want to learn more about VC. I can reach out to someone. I want to learn more about like, I want to move into the tech space. Like I can
You
reach out
have
to someone.
someone for that too.
There's
Yeah, that's important.
anything that you want, right? And so I think that that has been one of the biggest advantages, and it's something that is really helpful to me in my career. So both the audacity of believing that like you can make an impact, the desire and ability to articulate the impact you want to make, and a network that can really facilitate
Mm.
your drive to make an impact. All of
Those
present.
three right there is a,
Yeah.
I really like the fact that when you talk about networking, a lot of the guests have come on. There's a lot of common denominators that you guys do say, and
Yeah.
networking. I know sometimes people are a little bit nervous about that kind of stuff and to
Yeah.
get themselves because you got to be vulnerable a little bit, right? But networking
Yeah.
is definitely one of those words, and I know
Right.
early in your career, you definitely did a lot of networking because you were in agencies, music industry.
Yeah.
How did those roles prepare you for like the leadership role that you're in today?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to take one quick detour just to say something about the networking piece, because I do know that it is something that freaks a lot of people out and makes people feel like, oh, I feel inauthentic. I don't know how to do it. Or like, I don't have a network. So, like, how can I network? And I want to just say something about like the first roles that I had. So, the very first job that I got in the entertainment industry for real was at RCA Records. And the way that I got that marketing assistant job was I didn't know anyone really in the music industry. My family doesn't do that. So it would be easy for me to say, like, I don't have a network, so I can't get in. But I remembered that Clive Davis had gone to Harvard as well. I went to the alumni directory. I looked up his information. I sent him a letter. I didn't know
Like,
this man, right?
I'm gonna clap.
And
I'm gonna clap it up for you right there. Yep.
listen, I'm like, you got to build the network that you are missing, right? So this is not a like, well, if you have a network, I guess you can use it. It's like, no, you have to create a network even if you don't have one. And when I tell you that, like, I took a shot, like he could have said no, he could have never responded. But a few weeks later, I got a call from the HR team at the record label that he worked at saying, Mr. Davis got your letter, and we'd like to interview you for an assistant position, right? That was not going to come to my door. I had to go out there and get it. So I just want to demystify a little bit networking. Like networking doesn't mean that like you have to already be connected, right? Networking
Yeah.
also doesn't mean that you have to be a social butterfly, right? There's so
Yeah.
many things, and now it's even easier with LinkedIn and all those other things.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean,
But I think with
if you know how to utilize those things.
if you know how to utilize them, if you know how to
Yeah.
utilize them. And so with respect to kind of how those early roles, like my role at RCA, my role at Bad Boy, really has shaped kind of the executive that I've become. I'll tell you a story that I think really illustrates that. So when I started at RCA, I went to like a marketing meeting, right? It was my very first time going to like a big, you know, corporate meeting. And they had probably, they had a conference table that had maybe like 15 chairs around it. And then they had a kind of outer ring of chairs that were like right against the wall. People who've been in corporate offices and corporate, boardrooms have seen this sort of setup, right?
Yeah.
I walked in and I sat where I've sat in every room that I've ever walked into since I grew up. Like I sat at the table, right? In a classroom, like I sat in the front. I just didn't even think about it. And then after I don't know if it was my boss or if it was someone else who was like, by the way, assistants don't sit at the table, they sit on the outer ring. And I was like, oh, my bad. I didn't know that. Like, y'all have assigned seats? I was like, no, I'm not saying it's like assigned seats, but it's just like, and I share that to say, like, not that I did that perfectly, right? I do think that like you have to, once I was shared that information, like I adapted.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
I went in every time.
It's
It's like, I
protocols.
don't care what you say, like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I think bringing that energy of being willing to sit at the table, I've taken that with me throughout my whole career, because as you get more senior, you do get a chance to sit at
Yes.
the
It's true.
table. And there's so many people that are at the table, but not at the table. Like they say nothing, right? They try to sort of stick to whatever the room consensus is. They don't really stick their necks out for anything.
No.
If a new idea is brought up, they're the most likely to be like, I don't think it's going to work, right?
Yeah.
That kind of mentality. And I do think that like sometimes people think that like I'm going to kind of play my role. I'm going to keep my head down until I get there. And then when I get the title, I'm going to really flex on them. And
Yeah.
I will just tell
Yeah.
you that I've not seen that. You are who you are, right? You're going to remain that. So if you've built a mentality of like, the way I got here is by keeping my head down, when you get there, you're going to continue to keep your head down because now you're
Okay.
afraid of losing the seat, right? Because you
True.
never brought your full self to work and you're worried that if you start bringing it, then they're going to ask you to leave. So my approach has always been to be myself. Like, it doesn't mean be uncoachable. It doesn't mean be a know-it-all. It doesn't mean show up with like, arrogant energy, but like be authentic in who you are. If you're a person who's excited about things, be excited. If you're passionate, be passionate. If you're talkative, be talkative. Like, do that. Show people that
Utilize those
you care about
things.
being in the room. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a shot.
Especially if you want to sit at that table,
That's right.
right? Because those individuals had to demonstrate something along those lines in order to
Yes.
be there. You can't just sit in the corner and assume that you're going to make it to that table.
Yeah.
Maybe you could, but personally, it's going to come down to
Especially for
showcasing.
people that look like us, you're probably not going to if you're
Mhm.
keeping that down.
Yeah. Okay. Keep it 100. Keep it stacked. I
Yeah.
like that. Come on, Bronx all day. You just dropping it. You're like,
Listen,
look,
I think we
let me
gotta
tell you the
be honest,
facts.
right?
I
If
like
someone's
that.
gonna tune in and listen, like I'm like, I might as well tell you the truth. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to change the
100%.
game, right?
And
And make it work differently. But like until it does, we need to know what the game is and know how to play that one too.
Now, for the individuals that don't know, I know that obviously Liongate is massive, 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 massive. Could you just talk to us a little bit more about your current role at Liongate and how are you helping them? Because now you're talking
Yeah.
about sitting at the table, so let's talk about this table.
Yeah. So I've been at Lionsgate for just under 4 years. And basically, Lionsgate is, what people in the industry would call kind of a mini major when it comes to studios, right? We make films, we make television shows, we have things that are on streaming, we have day and date releases, we have, a live entertainment arm that will take and sort of adapt some of our properties into stage shows and like merchandising and all of that. So we are a full, kind of a full service studio in the entertainment space, but not at the size of a Disney or a Netflix or a Universal, right? We're smaller than that, but we have, some pretty big franchises that have become kind of, billion-dollar like businesses,
Mm.
multiple billion-dollar businesses, whether that is John Wick, The Hunger Games, Saw, like those are some of our bigger
Yep,
franchises. We have
yep.
Twilight, and we have like other, just original things that we've put out that have really connected with the culture. So what I do here, I head up and I lead this team called Inclusive Content. And basically what it is we started in 2020 with a mandate of helping the studio build a more diverse and inclusive film slate. So that's everything from working closely on the creative side with what we're doing in development, acquisitions, and that is really the content that's coming in, the scripts, the pitches, the finished films. Like we
Yeah.
help to evaluate them and give our executives notes on how those things are doing with respect to inclusion. So we actually just a couple months ago publicly shared our inclusive storytelling tool called StorySpark, which is basically a tool that we built internally that we use on every single project that really helps to highlight where the strengths are and where the opportunities are when it comes to inclusion in front of and behind the camera. So highly
Okay.
encourage anyone that is an executive, a storyteller, a writer, a director working on projects, reading scripts, watching movies, to go to getstoryspark.com and check out this tool. It really
Okay.
functions almost like a BuzzFeed quiz type of an approach to thinking about inclusion from a creative perspective. So
Mhm.
that's one side of the role. And then another piece of the role is really the marketing side. So I have folks on my team and sort of dotted line into the inclusive content team that are responsible for helping the marketing teams build a diverse and inclusive marketing campaign. So centering underrepresented audiences, realizing the power of those audiences,
True.
making sure that we're working with marketing and PR agencies and experts from diverse backgrounds on every single title, making sure we were thinking about the strategy from a globally diverse perspective and not sort of defaulting to thinking about the audience as mostly white, mostly male, mostly straight, mostly like really bringing in all of those dynamics. Because
Okay.
especially when you're talking about a Gen Z audience, like the audiences of the future, they expect a certain amount of diversity just as table stakes because that's who they are. And so how do we start to prepare and future-proof the industry and our marketing campaigns to really meet those audiences and, follow and keep up with a changing audience? And then also we're a part of the green light conversations, and green light is when, the studio decides like, we're actually going to make this movie and spend this 10, 20, $100 million on making the movie, another 10, 20, whatever it is on marketing the movie. So being in that room and getting a chance to provide a perspective from an inclusion point of view that is just as valued and prioritized as the perspective that the creative execs are bringing, that the marketing execs are bringing, we've been able to embed it and just make it sort of like, this is a part of a holistic assessment of a film project, the inclusive side of it, versus like this is an add-on or something that you tack on at the end after you've made all the decisions and you just want to make sure that it's not offensive. Like I say to people again, like we're not the diversity police, like we are a thought partner, right? We're not here to just simply correct or prevent, PR issues. We're really here to make the story better. So, that's a lot of what we do. And then finally, like we advocate really hard for filmmakers of color, women, LGBTQIA, to make sure that those people are getting shots. So we have an initiative focused on filmmakers of color, making low budget films that might be their first studio project, doing what we call some gate opening and making sure that we're trying to do what we can to diversify those lists of directors, writers, producers that can make studio level content. So it's a lot of different things. So I might be at the table for any of those discussions and making sure that, you're bringing it, because we're really, we work at Lionsgate, but we work for the community, we work for the culture, we work to make sure that we do show up in these conversations.
No, you definitely have a lot going on over there, but it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's all connected and it's all for a good cause. And
Yeah.
I know that you are very big on diversity and storytelling. Just talk to us a little bit more about that, and the importance of why is that to your audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different reasons why this is an important consideration in any content that's being made. My goal is that one day in the industry, we don't even have to say inclusive content, because all content is inclusive. And why would we make non-inclusive content? That sounds like a bad business decision. But until we get there, we have to say inclusive content, right? And to me, it matters for a number of different reasons. Like if someone wants the business and the data and the financial argument, it's like all we have to do is look at the audience that we're serving and how diverse that audience is, and understand that they care a lot about seeing themselves in the stories that they tell, right? So that's one. Or that are told. But I think secondarily, there's also the idea that content is probably the single most effective tool that we have to really change hearts and minds, to change culture. People watch stories and connect with characters in a different way than how they listen to the news or read a book or, to a lecture, especially from someone that they disagree with, right? And there's something about stories that, can convince someone who might say well, I don't think I know any queer people, right? To watch something, with a really compelling queer character and be like, oh man, they're just like me. Right? Or someone who doesn't have people of color that live in their neighborhood or maybe that go to their school, right? And they will watch a movie with people of color in it and all of a sudden feel a different level of empathy, connection. That is the power of stories. And so those of us who have the power to greenlight stories, to support stories, to get stories in front of millions and millions of people, I think we should take that responsibility really seriously, because the stories that we tell are shaping culture and are either reinforcing the status quo or helping people to envision something different than the status quo. And there's so many examples of how stories have done that. Yeah.
I was gonna say that when you're talking about all of that, when you're in this role, being a woman of color, right, sitting at the table, helping people tell their stories, right? Obviously, in a leadership role where you have to kind of mentor other individuals to hopefully get up there as well too. What a challenge you had to overcome, while doing this. I could imagine moving from industry to industry, but still staying within that wheelhouse. There had to be some type of challenge that you had to go through, face.
Yeah, I think that like challenges are constant. And I think sometimes people assume that like you get to a certain level or point in your career when it's easy. And like, if that's the case, like I haven't gotten there yet, right? There's just challenges all the time.
Oh
Like I
man.
remember, I had a mentor who said something that really stuck with us, those of us that are working on a project with him, things that matter are hard, right? And so the way that I have internalized that is that like oftentimes if I'm facing resistance, it's because I'm working on something that's really important because people usually don't spend a lot of time fighting things that are meaningless,
Mhm.
right? So like
True.
if you're going uphill, like you're probably going to a better place. It's just the process of getting there can be challenging. So challenges can be anything from like trying to find the right way to bring your point of view forward on some of the more quote unquote controversial issues, right? Being one of the few Black people in a room and being the one that is talking about how the Black characters aren't represented well, right? Or talking about how, we are misrepresenting this group or another, or like we really need to think about this audience, right? And trying to find the ways to do it that don't make, you feel tokenized, right? But
Mm-hmm.
also don't make other people feel like defensive. Like it really is an art, and I've gotten better at it over time. I think it is one of my superpowers that usually I'm able to get people to feel called in and not called out, to feel like I am a collaborator with them. I'm not a problem creator or a problem identifier. I'm a problem solver. But that takes time, and it doesn't mean that every single person, when you speak your truth, will say, "Thank you so much. I'm so glad you said that."
True.
Right? I wish, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people are like, that's exactly the wrong thing for us to think about. And I completely disagree, right? How do you bounce back when that happens, right? Not everything I say gets immediately implemented in a script, right? And there are some people who, might find that really difficult and it might demotivate them and it might change how they show up in the room, either make them more sort of bitter or make them less willing to bring forward their point of view. And you kind of have to let these types of challenges kind of roll off you and start every day as if yesterday was just another day, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't let it change you. You win some arguments, you lose some arguments. My thought is always like, it's not my job for you to get it. That's not my responsibility. My job is to present the best case possible, and
Yeah.
so when I'm critiquing the work that I do or that we do as a team, I'm more focused on like, did we make the case as well as we could have? The ultimate metric of success isn't always did the company do it or did the filmmaker agree? That is a metric, but it is not the metric because that is a metric that we don't control, right? We control if we made the best argument with the best data, with the best approach possible. And if we feel like, what, we could have argued for that better, or like, I don't think we were strategic enough in that, then we can tweak and work on that.
So then, what advice would you give to someone? Let's just say a young girl, listening to this interview right now, right? Who's looking to follow in your footsteps.
I would say that like one, I would say I'm humbled and I'm honored, and I hope that it inspires people to want to, pursue similar things. But I would also say that like I would encourage them to be open to the fact that the road that they are going to walk down might not even exist yet. The job that I'm in right now did
Okay.
not exist when I was, 5 or 6,
Yeah.
right? Very
No,
few
you're right. You're
studios
right.
now have a head of inclusive content. Like that's a new thing, right? So I always had the big picture vision of like, I want to work in content or connected to entertainment. I want to help to shape stories. I want to help to support stories. I want to get stories that I think matter out there. But exactly what road that was going to be, exactly what job that was going to end up being, all of the jobs along the way. I think part of what has helped me is that I haven't been so rigidly sort of connected to a fixed idea of how it has to happen. I just know the impact I want to make. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to move across different industries. So I would encourage that person to primarily lead with both passion and curiosity. Passion is the thing that's going to keep you sort of focused when it's hard and keep you remembering that like despite all of the mess that I may have to go through, there's a reason why I want to do this because I really believe in it and I love it. But then also curiosity, where like as new opportunities are presented, as the industry, especially if your goal is entertainment, right? Our industry is constantly changing,
Yeah.
right? The opportunities that exist today may not exist 10 years from now, but there will be different opportunities that will exist 10 years from now. And between now and 10 years from now, there will be a lot of different steps along the way that someone could take. And so I would say kind of trust the process a little bit, trust your own intuition, give every job that you get a chance to go after 150%, be
I respect
excellent,
that.
right? That's what's going to help you get the next thing. And as new opportunities get presented, someone says, oh, would you ever consider this job? Like, I'm never the person to say, like, no, I wouldn't. Like, usually I'm like, let me take a look, right?
Yeah,
Like, maybe
that's
there
good.
is something.
I get what you're
You
saying.
know,
That's important. Like you said, 10 years ago, some of these roles were never here, right? And
yeah.
next 10 years from now, there's gonna be more roles
There'll be a
that,
whole bunch of
yeah,
roles that I
oh,
don't even know of yet
so
because we've not thought of them yet. You might create a role.
yeah. But just, and I think that obviously taking on those different opportunities as you get older, you start to put, at least you have these skill sets, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the big skill sets that you definitely do possess is teamwork, right? Like, like, just talk about the importance of being a leader, right?
Yeah.
But then also the fact that you're a team player for a very diverse group of people.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that, in terms of what we have been able to accomplish as inclusive content at the studio, like none of it would have been possible with just me, right? Like I have such a great team working with me. And I think it's really important for leaders to constantly affirm and create space for their teams to show up, to get credit, and to be celebrated. I am myself a disruptor and an innovator, and I'm a person that always has new ideas. And I love being surrounded by teams that are the same way, by people who always have new ideas that are constantly thinking about new ways to do things. And I think that it's really important as a leader to foster that creative, entrepreneurial, innovative sort of spirit. So I think that's one big thing. And then I think when it comes to sort of like being a team player, like a part of that is that you have to hold kind of often we have to hold do like a dualities that may seem conflicting, but you actually do need both. Like
Mhm.
one is that, like, as I said at the beginning, like I fully believe that I, as one person, can make a difference, but I don't believe that I can do it on my own, right? It's like I need to do that alongside other people. And so, like, you can think and believe in your leadership potential, your individual contribution, and really try to bring that to the table. But you also have to be willing to work in tandem with other people, to let other people find the areas where they shine, to recognize that, like, you don't have every strength. And oftentimes, like, any strength overused is a weakness. So, like, being self
Mhm.
aware of sort of like, what are the things that I do bring to the table? And then what are the complementary skills that absolutely are needed to get this thing done that we want to get done that I don't have? And how do I hire for that? I think that like I've had the fortune of working for a lot of really inspiring leaders myself, but not all the time, right? I think that like, working in corporate America can be a bit of a mixed bag, right? You
Yeah.
have, but every leader teaches you a lesson. You're always learning one of two things from the leaders you work with, either the type of leader you want to be or the type of leader you don't want to be, but both are valuable,
Mhm.
right? And so taking that lesson is really important.
So then, one of the lessons that you probably have learned is working with like underrepresented, you know, demographics and backgrounds, like watching other leaders, but then becoming a
Yeah,
leader, and then seeing
yeah,
other leaders not doing it the right way,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Let's not call them out, but
yeah. Well,
why is
let's
it
call them
so?
out though.
Why is it so important to you?
Yeah, I think that like when it comes to being a leader who is from an underrepresented background that gets a chance to lead and mentor and advocate for executives that are coming up from underrepresented backgrounds, like it means so much for people to look up the ladder and see people that look like them. That is what gives them the belief that is possible. But at the same time, like, we can't assume that every single leader from your background is thinking about it like that.
True.
Right? Sometimes we assume
True.
that, like, oh, the other person that's Black and in the C-suite or in the senior leadership is going to be my mentor, and all the other people aren't going to be, right? Like, I would say, like, wait a minute, like, some of the best mentors that I've had have been white men in a lot of different circumstances. But I've also had incredible Black women that have mentored me, and people from all different backgrounds. So I think when it comes to kind of like, why I think it's important for underrepresented people to have good, strong people leaders and to find their own mentors and advocates and sponsors in their organizations, even if whether or not they do have a great direct people leader, is that, like, the only way we're going to change the complexion and composition of the C-suite is to have people who are in the C-suite bring people who are not in the C-suite under their wing and help them understand what it's like, right? So I'm constantly looking for more mentors myself in the C-suite, right?
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
but I'm also looking, like, to the earlier career folks in my companies and wanting to be an advocate. Like, sometimes it drives my assistant crazy because my calendar is nuts, but, like, if someone reaches out to me cold on LinkedIn, like, I can't say yes to everyone, but I say yes to more people than you would assume,
Okay.
right? If
I
there's
respect
another
that.
intern that, like, joins, like, if I see a Black intern that is in our group that I don't know, like, sometimes they'll reach out to me to get time. But if
Mhm.
they don't, sometimes I'll reach out to them and be like, do you want to get time? Right?
Yeah.
Because I know that, like, they're not going to be in a lot of rooms where they're going to
Yeah.
see more senior execs.
It's important if you have that leverage, like make it happen,
Yeah.
provide that opportunity for somebody. And it kind of leads me to that, I know you have a lot of great gems that you drop, but any last major words? I know mentorship was one of the things, one of the last things
Yeah.
you're saying, but like just to kind of conclude on our conversation today, like is there any last words that you would give to our listeners?
Yeah.
You said a lot of great things, but go on.
Sure, sure. Um, I think maybe the only other thing that I would add is, so, people that have worked with me for a while and have worked for me at different points are always like, you always have these, like, Kamala-isms, like your sayings. Like, I'm a big,
Come
like,
on, business.
I come from, like, a marketing background, and I'm constantly like, I love little gems, little nuggets, little pithy statements. Like, one of my favorite, that I haven't mentioned is, like, never waste a good crisis. I think that is so important in your career. There will be moments where the industry that you're going into is totally in disruption and potentially looks like it's in disarray. That is a crisis. What's the opportunity for you in that? Right? You might be in a point where, like, you have a really bad manager and you don't feel like you're getting the mentorship and the support that you need, right? That's a
Mhm.
crisis. What is the opportunity in that? I think constantly looking for what that opportunity might be, whether it's like, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to get to know some other leaders at my manager's level, so that, like, when performance reviews come around, my
True.
manager is not the only person that can say good things about my work. Other people will say good things about me. Right. And so just always thinking a couple steps ahead and always recognizing that, like, in every crisis, there is a lot that you're going to be able to get done that might not be possible when things are
Mhm.
kind of going well. So
Mhm.
I think never waste a good crisis is a good one.
Okay. Well, I'm tapping into that one as well too.
Yeah.
Kamala, thank you so much for your time and just being present with us, and just dropping a lot of information. Obviously, again, being another Yachty on the other side, it's always a pleasure to hear that us Yachties are taking over the world, taking it by storm. So, kudos to you. Congratulations on all your accolades. Our listeners are definitely going to get a lot of gems from today, and I want to let the listeners know, if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Kamala, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcast.